Welcome to the Recover You podcast. I'm Kylene.
And I'm Patrick.
We are a couple in recovery
From sex addiction
and betrayal trauma. Together, we share our story to encourage you on your journey. It's here that we talk about sex addiction, betrayal trauma, mental, emotional, and physical health, faith, and anything and everything needed to recover you to your most authentic self that God created you to be. Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of Recover You. Hello, Patrick.
Hello, Kylene.
How are you today?
Nah.
How are you today?
I'm doing good. It's college football Saturday, which always makes me happy.
Woohoo.
Yeah. So pretty excited about that.
Yes, it's been a busy time for us recently. We traveled a little bit. We got to hang out with Keegan. That was super, super, super fun. Do you want to tell everybody?
Yeah. So
totally unrelated to anything we're going to talk about today.
Yeah. So Keegan's at West Point and
heading into his senior year.
Starting his senior year, and he got his class ring. It's like a big deal there.
I did not know that West Point started the class ring thing. I didn't know they were the first college to do class rings. It was like 1835 or something. Mm-hmm. And then other colleges followed suit. I had no idea that it started at West Point.
Yeah. So it's a really big deal. And like, West Point's a really special place to me because I went there too. It just has a lot of like deep meaning, a lot of great friends. And so through the 3 years that he's been there, this is really, it's really special to experience it through your kid's eyes too. And he was so proud. He and his buddies were all so proud to get their rings.
Oh my gosh, it was so fun. He was so happy.
Yeah.
I almost cried like 3 times.
Yep.
And the only reason I didn't is because like we're in public watching the ceremony, and I'm like, I want to pay attention to it. I want to be able to see the rest of it. So I'm like, look up at this guy, blink back the tears, blink back the tears, blink back the tears.
Yeah.
It was so emotional.
Yep.
There were like 3 spots during the ceremony where I was like, don't cry.
Yeah. And it's really special because he wants to spend time with us, and he got you a little ring pendant and stuff like that. So.
That still makes my heart explode.
Yeah.
I was so excited. I knew it was coming, but then being in the environment and having him give it to me, and I hadn't seen it, and then him telling me a little bit about it was so special. So like he gets his ring. There's a ceremony outside, which by the way, it was so hot. It was so hot, and we were dying, and we had to be there or we didn't have to, but we were there like 2 hours early, an hour and a half early. And we were like sitting on these bleachers that made it like 10 degrees hotter than if you weren't sitting on the bleachers, and everybody's sweating like,
it was pretty
baking in the sun.
Hot.
So by the time the ceremony was over, you're like, let's get out of here. But anyway, so we watched the ceremony. It was outside. They get their rings. It's very emotional, for us. They're very, very excited. And then afterwards, the parents flood the field, which was cool. And the kids are like so excited. They're like jumping up and down. They're hugging each other. They're taking pictures. They're just like enjoying the moment. It's kind of almost like a graduation, but obviously it's not. And then the parents are there, and Keegan, we were taking some pictures, and he's like, here, Mom, I have this for you. And it was like this little box, and I open it up, and it has the pendant in it, which is basically like it's like
the top of their ring.
Yeah, the top of the ring, like the gemstone part of the ring with the same font that says West Point around it, and then 2026 underneath it. So it's like basically the top part of the ring, but then it's put on a necklace. And so he picked all of that out for me when he picked out his ring. And that was really special. And then he goes, Mom, look, I put my initials on the back of it too. And I was like, oh my gosh. But it was really special. So that was a special moment. And then it felt so much like he wanted to include me, and that really, was just so. It hit me so hard in a positive way. I just it felt really, really nice because like the rest of the weekend, that there was the ceremony that one day, and then the next day there was this reception followed by a banquet, and so that's like the formal night where you dress up and everything. And so the stone that he had chosen was, I want to say, rhodolite garnet. So it's a deep red. And so I was like, hey, just tell me why, tell me your thought process in choosing what you picked, because it's a different stone than his and all this kind of stuff. He's like, well, you always wear that red dress. And I don't know, maybe he's thinking about that one that I've worn several times. But then I also wore a red dress, a different one for my concert this year. So I wear red dresses a lot.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay. And then I had packed 2 dresses, a blue one and a red one for the banquet. And I was like, well, I know which one I'm wearing now. And so I wore that, and I had the pendant on and everything. And we were kind of going through the reception in the bank, or during the reception, we were taking pictures and stuff. And when you pose with your ring weekend, everybody's so excited about it. They pose like with this fist pointing towards the camera, so your ring is on full display. And so you guys had several pictures of like the two of you with your rings out, and Keegan was like, "Mom, hold up your necklace." So that was really special because I was like, "Oh, it like meant something to him, and he really wanted me to be part of something that I really have no business being a part of." You know what I mean? Like I didn't.
You do.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. Like it's not the same as me having a ring, but he wanted to include me as much as possible, and so that was just really the reason that's so special to me is because I feel like as we have progressed in our relationship, day one, I always would have adopted him if it had been a reasonable thing to do, but it just wasn't because we never wanted to, not include his bio mom or take anything away from her, anything like that. And so it wasn't really a thing that I felt like I could pursue in any way. But I would have, right? And even just for like the meaning behind it so that he knows like, hey, like this is something that I want to do. And this is, how I view you and how much I love you and stuff like that. But what's been really special about like these moments is I feel like he's sort of adopting me. Yeah. And like he's accepting me and inviting me in to be his mom. And so that's really it's so special.
Yeah. It's
it
really,
was really cool.
Yeah, and I was thinking, I don't think I voiced this to you, but I was thinking about this over the weekend as well. And we always, it's so important to go heal, and you don't really understand what's going to come out of all of that healing. And so I think about our family and how we've been able to navigate over the last 4.5+ years, and how all three of us have reached a level of health. And it shows up in these moments, you know what I mean? It shows up in how we're able to express towards each other. And so, when you engage in this process, it's much more than just stopping looking at porn. There's, or you know what I mean? There's a lot to it that comes in and shows up. Your kids feel it. They see the health. They, live a little bit more comfortable around you because you're safer. And that's just what healing brings. And so it's and it allows for great displays of affection and vulnerability and honesty and things like that. It's really nice.
Yeah, it was super, super, super meaningful. And it just like hit me on a really deep, I keep using the word special, but it is. It's just so special. Yeah. It was just a really meaningful moment. So I really appreciated that. It was very, very fun.
Yep. It really was.
We all, it is nice, like to your point, because we've talked about how, he and I have had a bumpy road, and it was kind of difficult sometimes to gel together, and that's continually progressed over the course of our relationship. And then I think it exponentially improved after we started getting into a recovery process because of all the things we learned and how we learned to communicate, and just the level of intentionality and vulnerability that we started to bring into conversations and bringing him into those conversations. So I think that changed the game. And so I'm really thankful for that. Yeah.
I know for myself, and we did talk about this, is, through, he went, it's been 3 years, so about 1.5 years into recovery is when he showed up there. And I remember just feeling this heaviness every time I went there, like because of our situation and everything we had been through. And even the last time I was there in February, he really drew a lot out of me. He was asking me about the automobile accident I was in, and and I actually broke down while I was describing it, and he was like, rubbing my shoulder, like, "It's okay, Dad," and but like this time I didn't feel any of that heaviness. And so
it was just happiness.
It was just happiness, and it's like, and it allowed me to view West Point differently. It allowed me to view our relationship differently, allowed me to view him differently. So it's a process, but it's really nice, to kind of get to that point.
Yeah. You had said because, the mottos that they have are so much about integrity and honesty, and that's sort of why you would go and feel, like I didn't uphold that.
Right. I didn't live up to it. I didn't, and so now it's kind of like, yeah, but I'm living into it now.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so like, it's never late. It's never late. It's never too late, you know? So.
Speaking of honesty, my favorite part of the weekend was when we took all the cadets to lunch, not all 1,000 of them, but Keegan and his friends. Yeah. And they put me on the bill as a cadet.
Oh, yeah.
I was very, very excited about that. I was like, they thought I was one of them.
Yeah.
And they gave me the student price. So I was very flattered by that. But then you had to be really honest and tell them I was an adult and get charged the full price.
That's right.
Which I was in full support of. I will be very clear. Yep. I was very appreciative that they thought I was younger than I am. But I also absolutely agreed with your decision to be honest about it. Yes. I support that, but that was very flattering. I was very excited about that.
Of course.
Okay, so all of that has nothing to do with what we're going to talk about today. Although I think it does in a way, because what we just sort of brought up is all of the wonderful things that healing can bring about into our life, right? Like more calm, more peace, more alignment, more better relationships. We're able to enjoy life more. Those are all because of the work that we did, right? Like maybe without recovery, we could have had a similar experience, but maybe it wouldn't have had as much depth to it, you know? And so I think that's really important that, you know, yes, this is just a personal little tidbit of our life that we're sharing on the podcast, but I think it has meaning behind it because of everything that allowed it to be as good as it was this weekend, right? And I think that's important to share. And the other half of the podcast that we're going to talk about today is the reality of grief after recovery. And so you guys have probably heard, I know many of you have been listeners from the beginning, and so you've actually heard a lot of our evolution through the process of the past couple years, where we've gotten healthier and healthier and healthier and happier and happier and happier. And I know you can hear it in the way we talk and the way we interact, the way we share information. And you and I feel it as we communicate on this podcast, how much lighter it gets as we share, right? And there are still moments where there's grief, right? And so I think, again, to be a person of integrity, when we're talking about recovery and we're encouraging recovery and we're talking about healing, I think it's only fair to be honest about all the facets of what that looks like. Because I do think sometimes there's this idea that healing means we never have to think about something again, or we never have to visit it, or if a scar is healed, I'm never going to feel the pain of the scar again, or the pain of the wound again. And it's like, you know, when people are like, oh, I can tell that it's going to rain because my elbow's hurting, and they had an elbow injury like 15 years ago. You know, it's kind of like that. It's like the injury itself might be healed and repaired, but you know, you've lived through this thing. And so I was actually reading, I should have actually brought the book down and read this excerpt. But it was Holy Hurt, that book that I'm reading about spiritual trauma. And there was a whole section in there where she was kind of talking about this idea that is like, how do we talk about healing? Because people, I think when we use certain terminology, we have certain stories attached to what that means and what that looks like. And really, when we're talking about recovery, when we're talking about healing, we need to be honest about what that means. And it doesn't mean that you're going to somehow check this final box and never feel the pain of what happened to you again. That's just not reality. And so we have to be really honest about, yes, do we think that you can heal through recovery? Do we think that couples can be very happy and healthy and reconcile effectively? Absolutely. And we've been very honest about the fact that that takes a lot of work to get to that point. And when you quote unquote arrive or quote unquote get to that point, it's never really like over. And so this kind of came up for us a couple days ago, and we thought, let's talk about it and share what our experience was, just because it's normal. And I want to normalize that grief, a couple things I want to normalize, that grief can still come up and there's nothing wrong with you. It doesn't mean you didn't do the healing work or that you didn't deal with your triggers enough or that you didn't deal with your trauma enough. Like it's just part of life. Also, there were new levels of awareness that I came to in the conversation that we had a couple days ago, because it just sort of came out. It wasn't planned. I wasn't sitting around feeling triggered or anxious or upset about something and then really needed to talk to you about it. We started a conversation and then emotion came out. And through the emotion sort of subconsciously streaming as I was talking, I kind of came to some new awarenesses. I was like, I didn't really realize I felt that way, or I had never really described it that way to you before. And then the third thing is really highlighting your response to that, because I think your response to the emotion that was brought up is why we're able to actually continue to move through the healing process. Because just to shortly kind of share, like, you received it very, very well, obviously. And so, so I thought we would just kind of talk about it. So what happened? I had this video that I had seen that I thought was really beautiful, of a couple getting married and the woman reading her vows. They were very long, but they were so personal and so heartfelt. And I sort of, almost jokingly, maybe not jokingly, but I sort of handed it to you and I was like, hey, if we ever get remarried, like, this is the kind of vows I want, right? Like, because I was like, this is so special. And so you watched it, and then that started this conversation. And she had said things in there like, my heart feels safer in your hands than it does in my own body. And I was like, oh, that's like, that's really deep, right? Yep. And then she had said another,
a lot of safety.
That's a lot of safety. Yeah. and she had said, you study me like I'm a new language to learn, or something along those lines. I was like, oh, that's interesting, because first of all, it's a beautiful way to say it, but also I've used similar language talking about when I'm interested in something, you learn the new language with me. And so I really kind of felt like that resonated. But what happened is I had watched this, I shared the video with you, and then we started talking about it. And then a lot of emotion came up for me, because I was like, going through what we've been through, I have had to reconsider a lot of things in my life, many of which I'm not sure I have a resolution to in terms of how I think about them, or I don't know if there's like a decision point about what I believe. And one of those things is marriage. Like, how do I feel about the idea of marriage when you and I have been through this really, really hard thing, and then I see so many other people struggling, and then I see so many people stuck because they have this idea that, like, I'm not allowed to get out of this thing, right? For religious purposes or whatever. And so I have really conflicting feelings around the whole idea of promising to be with someone forever, no matter what, and then also like this whole commitment or recommitment, or I'm very conflicted, because I very much believe in it on one hand. And I very obviously, like, I think relationships are worth fighting for, and we've done that, and it's worth it. And there's a lot of goodness there. And spiritually, like, I love the idea of what it like should be. But then living in the world and going through what we've gone through, there's just a lot of like internal, does that make sense? There's like a lot of internal conflict around that. So that was one of the things that kind of came up. And then just a lot of sharing the grief that sometimes comes up, that when I watched that video, I think one of the emotions that hit me when we were talking was I very much felt like she did when we got married. Like, I felt that loose, that free, that light, that happy, that trusting, all of those things. And one of the dichotomies or ironies that hits now is that I feel like you are like a 10 out of 10. You've done the work. Like,
you're a 15 out of 10.
Thank you. I just feel like how to describe this. Like, I really loved you, trusted you, was vulnerable with you, loved our relationship before discovery, right? There was a lightness there. There's a happiness there. But you as a person, I thought were a really good person. I really liked you. And I think I could have said similar things to what she said if I was that eloquent when we got married, right? If I had thought about him. But what's really kind of hard is that I feel like you're a better person today than you were when we got married. And yet there are times when, because of what we've been through, now it's difficult for me sometimes to fully not be vulnerable, because I think I am very vulnerable with you, but to fully take all of the armor off and to send and receive the energy exchange, the emotional energy exchange in a light, not thinking about it maybe vulnerability is the right word, extremely vulnerable way. So it's weird because I feel like in a lot of ways I'm extremely vulnerable with you. And then maybe in other ways I still have difficulty completely opening that part, like energetically sending that your way and reciprocating. And so I think it was just kind of something that started a conversation. It was kind of hard because I was like, well, now you're a better person and I believe it and I love you and we've worked really hard and this is awesome. And I was that way then and I'm not that way now. And that's kind of like, it feels not fair.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. As you were, I think the way so I watched it and then after it ended, 10 minutes later, I was like...
It was long, but it was so good, wasn't it? It was so good.
You were like, do you ever feel bad? And, the answer to that is, of course I feel bad. Like I wish, and oddly enough, the pastor who married us before we went on this previous vacation he and I were texting and he texted me your vows and my vows. And I was like, wow, you've really lived into everything you said. And I'm trying, right? I said a lot of really great things, but because of my addiction and the manipulation and all those things, I wasn't able to live into that. And so I'm trying now, you know what I mean? I want to make sure that with everything that the gifts that you have given me and that a lot of people have invested in me, I want to live into those things now. And so it does make me feel bad. Like I would love to have given you the perfect package and had it been perfect, all of those years. And then we started going down. That's how the conversation kind of started getting deeper and deeper and deeper. And I think you had said something along the lines that like if somebody else met me now that
if another woman met you now, first of all, there are a lot of women I think would love to be in a relationship with you, and I think if they met you today, knowing your history and then experiencing who you are today, it would be the easiest thing in the world to be vulnerable and feel safe and trust you and all this kind of stuff if they weren't the one that had gone through what we went through. That's
right. Yeah. And so, but what was interesting is you were talking, I was really thinking about my parallel emotions after I went through my automobile accident and how hard that was and coming out on the other side of that and understanding the permanent nature of what was that came out of that. And so, and that was really hard because that happened when I was 34 and certainly it permanently damaged my ex-wife and changed the trajectory for Keegan and I in an unalterable way, right? Which led me to meet you and, which is awesome. But there were some really, really hard things. And so it was, I always kind of view that moment as the moment where I kind of lost my innocence, right? I lost hey, I can just outwork all this stuff and it'll be fine. You know what I mean? Like it was that moment where life's permanence and life's tragedy and life, or the tragedies of life become apparent in your life. Like we go through life and we read about tragedies, right? Or we read about wars, but they don't necessarily resonate personally.
Yeah.
Like we can read about betrayal or we can watch betrayal in a movie, right? But until it happens to us, it doesn't resonate in the same way. So, what my betrayal did to you, what I'm responsible for is that I stole your innocence on what you thought marriage could be, the fairy tale dream of what marriage is. And that's not your fault. That's my fault, that I did that to you. And so it's not like, well, you just had a naive view early on. What was your problem? You know what I mean? That's, that was a really, it's something that I stole from you. And
well,
so
I was basing it on the reality of our relationship,
of what I presented,
of what I knew.
Right.
And I was like, hey, listen, this checks all my boxes.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah.
Right. So it's,
and that was one of the things we were talking about is how that kind of has messed with my head a little bit. So I'm like, are there people that can like live that connected fairy tale happy life for their whole relationship? Or does somebody always go through something like this?
Yeah.
Like that's kind of what I'm talking when I feel like there's that conflict about, can I still hold on to that as a idealistic belief or is it permanently gone now? You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's hard because I don't want people to lose their innocence. I would love to hear that there are people in life that go through and never experience anything hard and and then they get to old age, and then they go to sleep at night and quietly and gently and peacefully slip away. That would be wonderful, right? But I
think there's hard for everybody, but I mean, like this level of what you're talking about, that's like life altering. It changes the way you view the entire world. It changes the way you view reality. Your spectrum of reality, perception of reality. What am I trying to say? That is destroyed. And I think when someone's perception of reality is destroyed, it's incredibly destabilizing in more than one area of your life.
Well, I think that's where PTSD comes from.
Right.
Like if you think about a noble person who decides to become a police officer, but then they get exposed to the dark sides of society. You know what I mean? The hurt and the pain and the murders, and it's like I would imagine. My brother went through it as a firefighter. He was exposed to many tragedies as a firefighter, and it's hard sometimes for your body to absorb that and your mind to kind of make sense of it. And so I think that's why this process is so hard. And I even asked you during this conversation, because you were like, I was like, well, do you feel like you could be that free and loose with somebody else, right? Because, sometimes it's like, well, no, it's you. I'll never be free and loose with you again. Okay, well, could you be free and loose with somebody else? And you were like, gosh, I don't know. I don't know. And so that, that just, it's changed your view. Like for me, to use the accident analogy, I drive by hospitals now and I have a different view of what I used to think of in a hospital. Because I remember my experience of sitting in there and everything was touch and go. And then, all of those things. And until you kind of go through that, like you don't, it's like being in a car accident. People see car accidents, but...
Well, and you went through it twice in a way. You went through with the accident with your first wife, and then you went through cancer with me. And so I would imagine... medical situations would be very scary for you.
Right. It's kind of like, here we go again, So it's this is, these emotional scarring that hits you. It's like, it's always... to your point, I think it's always going to be there. And I was explaining this story to a friend of mine, and he's like, well, did you remind her that you were a knucklehead? And I was like, well, yeah. I mean, like, because I said that, I was like, I don't, this is the cost. This is the relational cost of me doing what I did. And just because you go through 4.5 years of healing doesn't mean that the cost is gone. You know what I mean? The cost is still there. You can heal, you can have fun, you can get better, you can do all of these things, but the cost is still, comes due, right? Or the price comes due, or whatever. However,
the reality of it, the pain of I think the thing is, we have to remember this bad thing happened. It will never not have happened.
Right.
So to your point with that question, I could go and be in a relationship with somebody else, but this bad thing still happened in my life. So how would it impact the way I relate in other relationships? Would it be less? Would it be the same? Would it be different? I don't know. But it would still be there. That's for sure. Right. And so I'd have, even if I did that, I'd have to think about, do I still have things to process around that?
Well, and also, like your level of, like and it's not a mind game, but it's hard for you because it's like, today, or you believe 99%, whatever that is, that you can trust me and you believe what I'm doing. If you got into another relationship, you're like, how do I trust this person? I was bamboozled for 9 years, you know what I mean? And so like, how do I know that I can trust this person, and what process would I need to go through to make sure I fully can trust this person? You know what I mean? And so,
and just to, in case anybody's worried, we're not thinking about getting divorced.
But
I want to like make sure that that's, like we talk about that too, like the fact that we have these conversations and don't necessarily feel threatened by them.
Right.
That's key. That's really important.
Yeah.
Like if I have a thought or a fear, and then you're like, well, do you think that you would feel safer with somebody else? Like, you can only say something like that when you've done enough work on your end, where honestly, from your perspective, I would imagine part of the reason you bring it up is because you go, whatever happens, like, I want you to be healthy.
I do want you to be healthy.
Right? As opposed to some sort of deflective, defensive, self-protective response.
Yeah, I don't want to be like, well, gosh, maybe you just need to go to more therapy, or maybe you just need to work through this a little bit more. It's like, well, no. Sometimes things are what they are, and so like I know at the end of the conversation you asked me, you said, hey, you're not going to like. You didn't say spiral. You're not going to be sad about.
I didn't want you to like when I voice if grief comes up or I have thoughts about something or insecurities. When I voice that, I don't want the outcome of that for you to be to internalize it and, be like, oh, like it's me. Because in the midst of like early recovery and shame, that's exactly what you would have done. You would have been for 3 days being like, oh, she should be with somebody else. But no, what we've done now is like, it's such a safe relationship that we can talk about these things bi-directionally. Yep. And that's really important because actually just even verbalizing them and having the conversation in a safe way then dissipates a lot of the energy and actually made me feel a lot better. And I was like, okay, sometimes when you feel overwhelmed or scared or like, I don't know, like the grief is coming up, if you're able to talk about it and it's received in a safe way and the energy dissipates and after you're like, oh, this is totally manageable. And why do you think it feels totally manageable? Because I have somebody that can help me process it. Right. And I don't feel like I have to hide something from you. I don't feel like I have to change who I am. I don't have to walk on eggshells about how I say something. I'm able to just say like, these are the emotions that are coming up for me right now. And you're able to sit with that and go, I hear you. There's a reason that you feel that way. Mm-hmm. I'm part of the reason you feel that way because you didn't before this happened. And whatever happens is going to be okay and we can work through it together. Yeah. And you also sort of like receive the information, interpret it, and kind of share it back to me with like just how you did here on the podcast. You're like, I understand why you would feel that way. And sometimes, when it's appropriate, you share, I can understand why you feel that way because I felt something similar. Now, sometimes there's certain situations where like...
Yeah, there are differences.
Yeah. No. I mean, there's certain situations where immediately saying, I can relate because of XYZ may not be appropriate because you're taking But in this particular situation, it was very... safe.
Well, and I was thinking about this. So like you were talking about like my reaction used to be like, oh, she's better off without me. And that was basically because I was living out of shame. And I know that sometimes I'll hear guys say, well, she couldn't get along without me. And it's like, hey, you're not that special, dude. She really could get along without you. So let's not throw that out there like she's incapable after you've hurt her. That's a really crappy way to view things, like you should want your wife who you've betrayed to be able to get along without you, right? Because that's a gift you can give her, and like, hey, listen, no matter what happens, I'll help you with the kids. We'll work on that. But if you need that space, But I think where if I can contrast the emotions where I used to go down the shame spiral, like it's better off that she's with somebody. The way I feel today is, number one, I know I'm going to be okay because I've worked on that. I would be very sad if we went through this. But I'd also, to your point, I'd want you to feel better. If I was holding you back because of all of these things and we mutually came together and said, hey, this is, we have to do something different, then I would be happy for you, right? I wouldn't be like, well, what the heck or whatever. So, and once again, that's not what we're talking about. We're not, but this is just, this is just an open and honest conversation. So to your point, I was able to check in with myself and, sometimes I'll ruminate and wake up in the morning and think it through. And it was a very healthy way to view it. And actually, I mean, I said this to you, I was like, you said a lot of really, really nice things about me. And, that doesn't, it's nice to hear you say that, people would love to be with you.
They would.
You know what I mean?
Because you're a good person.
I don't want to be with anybody else. But it's like I could take those compliments, but also understand the nuance and the complexity of the situation.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I don't know if I had ever thought about it this way or ever verbalized it this way, but it's a super bizarre thing that I was trying to verbalize, that like the grief after recovery is like it's like death. It's like you died when the person that I married died when I started going through discovery and disclosure. And so there is this grief as if you have lost someone and something really important in your life. But you're still alive. right? So it really kind of messes with your mind a little bit. So a lot of times what I tell partners and what helped me was to very much think about, okay, you are a different person now. You're a different person. I'm a different person. We're two different people learning how to be in a new relationship. Like I had to like black and white separate them before discovery, after discovery, new people, different relationship, trying something different. And that helped me mentally, but life isn't quite that black and white. So like it is very helpful. I still encourage people to do that. It is very helpful to help me move through things, to think about it in that way. And the reality is it's not quite that black and white. And so the grief comes in, where grief goes, there's nuance here. That relationship isn't actually dead. He's still alive. It's not exactly a new person. He's still the same person, new in terms of transformation, in terms of thoughts, in terms of safety, in terms of honesty, in terms of all these things, but he's still the same human in the same body bag, right? So that body bag sounds like death, but like skin bag,
Skin bag.
Human form, physicality.
Tomorrow morning, I'm going to take my skin bag. I'm going to go for a 4-mile run.
Go to the gym, tighten up that skin bag. Okay, that's gross. Do you see what I'm saying though?
Yeah.
So it's really hard for a betrayed person to navigate these things because they are not black and white. So sometimes thinking about them in certain ways does help with the healing process. But then grief will come up and remind us of the nuance. And grief will come up and remind us that we did lose this thing. It did feel like death. We did have this great loss. And even though things are great and you have worked on so much healing and I have worked on so much healing and we are just so much happier now, and like life is like pretty normal most of the time, every once in a while there's this reminder of like this thing that I lost, right? And so that's kind of why we wanted to just bring up that conversation and share a little bit about some of the thoughts that came up around it, because if you guys go through something like this, I don't want you to feel like you haven't done enough hard work or there's something wrong with you, because grief is one of those things that I love the visual where there's this meme that goes around social media about grief, where we think that if there's a jar and there's a ball of grief in it, we think that as we heal, the ball of grief goes down. But the reality is that the jar gets bigger. So what that means is the grief is always there. It's this bad thing that's happened to you. Good. You've lived it. It exists. That is what it is. And there's no level of healing that's going to be like, that thing never happened to me. Or thinking about that thing isn't going to make me sad. Or thinking about that thing isn't going to make me feel like I lost something important to me. That part doesn't change. But what does change is building our life around that, so the jar gets bigger in terms of like resilience and strength, and creating a life that we really do like, and all this newness and like all of the fun and the laughter and the goodness and the safety and the vulnerability and the honesty and all the parts that we talk about creating in the new relationship, right? And that part increases. And so then in terms of your life, the grief seems smaller because it doesn't take as much space up, but it's not because the grief has changed. It's because your life has expanded. Yeah. Your life has expanded beyond the trauma. Your life has expanded beyond the pain. And now you've filled the space with all of these good things. Yeah. So if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, healing is not perfection. Healing is not ever feeling anything bad again. Healing is actually feeling more, being able to understand what that is, being in a situation where you can possibly voice it and process through it and make sense of it and not allow it to drive you into unhealthy behaviors or anything like that. You know what I mean? And so, you're absolutely right. I like that analogy of your tank, your capacity grows tremendously, but that rock is still in there. And so, but you recognize it and you go, okay, I got it.
And I think, a couple things that I want to make sure are maybe takeaways from us sharing this is, what we don't want to do is recognize that the grief is there, that the rock is there, and then not share it, not talk about it. But on the other hand, in order to do that, there has to be safety created. So I really didn't think too much about talking about it as the emotions were coming up. I just kind of and out it came. And then as we were talking about it, I was like, I've never really thought about that before. Or does this hurt your feelings when I say this? Or, I was kind of just sharing as it came up and saying, wow, I didn't really realize all of this was in there. And it's confusing sometimes, and it comes up sometimes, and we just talked about it. So for me number one, the betrayed partner being willing to share those things. But number two, that has to be safe. And so the second thing that I kind of really wanted to emphasize is your ability to listen and not take that personally per se, at least not in a way that like you didn't make it all about you.
Right.
You did not make that conversation about you. You realized the reality of the situation, and you were like, I get it. I know why you would feel that way. And you never said there's anything wrong with me for feeling that way.
Right.
So I guess my question to you, and from all betrayed partners everywhere, is like, how did you get to the place where you can sit there and listen to that and at the same time not shame spiral or make it about you, even if it's only internally? You know what I mean?
That's a little...
I don't know. I just woke up one day and I could do it.
Well, I think I'm a big believer in calling things for what they are. You know what I mean? And so I did hurt you. I did betray you. I did manipulate you. I did lie to you. Right? I did all of those things. I did things that broke my vows. I did things that I was unfaithful in my behavior, and that's a fact. I mean, that's not an emotional. That's not whatever. That is just a fact. So. That is, it is what it is. And I've always recognized that, hey, I did these things.
Yeah.
Nobody held a gun to my head. You didn't, because you didn't pick up your socks, which is kind of a thing, your socks like under the bed or whatever. That didn't cause me to become a cyber sex addict. You know what I mean? You did nothing wrong in this thing. And I've always felt that. I've always felt like you did nothing wrong. But I also I've spent a lot of time trying to understand why these things were a part of my life and why they showed up in there and why that was there. And then, I guess the other thing is I really, really like you. You know what I mean? And I want you to feel safe. I want you to feel, when you say, I don't want to celebrate our anniversary, I don't want to be like, oh, what the hell's wrong with you? I want to be like, okay, I get it. You know what I mean? And I also have witnessed over 4.5 years that things have shifted, things change, your perspective, differs. And we've talked about some of those things on the podcast, but it's like, I don't know what the future holds as far as how you're going to view certain key events pre-discovery. I don't know what's going to come out of that, but I've seen, just as we've kind of gone down this road on rings, I've seen your perspective shift. And so, I don't know, like you and I did talk about this, like, vow renewal, remarry ceremony, what date do we choose? Like, it's all been confusing in a way, but I think it's been part of, we haven't put a lot of pressure on that to kind of define it. And so like I think this came to me earlier in the year when we rolled through our actual wedding anniversary. And, you don't want to celebrate it, and which is perfectly fine. I completely understand that. But I actually, what hit me was I can celebrate it. I can go, you know what? I'm very thankful for the day that you and I got married, because I wouldn't be here today had it not been for your love, your grace, your boundaries. I'm laughing about it. But,
why are you laughing about my boundaries?
I don't know. It's just funny. What'd you call yourself? The boundary queen?
You're welcome. You are welcome.
But I wouldn't be here. So I'm not going to ignore that day, you know what I mean, as far as the appreciation I have. But once again, I'm also going to recognize that dates are just dates. And, it's kind of like counting sobriety days. That just becomes a day. It's more about your lifestyle. What is the depth of our relationship now? It doesn't have to, and it doesn't change the depth of our relationship if we don't celebrate a day. It doesn't. And sometimes people really assign deep, deep value. And you watch these couples that are the most unhealthy in the world have their 40th wedding anniversary and put it all over Facebook. That doesn't mean that you have a healthy relationship. It just means that you mark a day, So,
or even after recovery, maybe rushing to do vow renewals, because it's like we've talked about like hypersexuality, or like sometimes it might show up as a vow renewal like super fast or things like that, where we're putting pressure on an activity over the connection.
Yeah.
Like we're putting meaning into an event or a behavior or an experience because we think it might be the bridge to the deeper connection, but it's usually not, right? It's a false sense of.
Yeah.
It's not, and I'm not saying like, hey, there are certain people that might have gotten into recovery really well and had a vow renewal and it meant a lot and they've been fine since then. But I'm saying more in like the things that are rushed, right? Because your point is like, we're not rushing anything. And part of the reason we don't rush things is because they just haven't, like we want to wait until something feels right. Like the date that we chose to celebrate our quote unquote second anniversary kind of just very accidentally, organically happened because it happened to be the day that you sat down and read me a letter and get, all this kind of stuff. And so we kind of were like, okay, well, we'll use that. But then to your point, recently when we were talking about it, you were like, yeah, but like sometimes people aren't very supportive about shifting a day to celebrate. So like if you tell somebody, hey, we're not celebrating our original anniversary, they may respect that in terms of not sending you a happy anniversary text, but they may not be willing necessarily to send you that happy anniversary text on a different day because they think about it differently or there's something there. So it's kind of weird because really we just have to. And part of this is frustrating for me because I feel like it's my whole life with my personality is that I forge paths that people don't understand. Like I think that's just and not in a rebellious way or not in a trying to be difficult way at all. It's just the way I think and the way I live my life. And I think sometimes people don't always understand it because it's not necessarily the status quo. And so that sometimes feels very lonely for me because I don't feel very seen and understood like in the world. And this is just like, I feel like this is just another example of that. Like if we're talking about like, oh, I don't necessarily think there's like a wide net of acceptance for the way we maybe choose to recognize or not recognize our relationship moving forward. But the reality of it is, and this is what I would encourage everybody listening, is you have to define what your relationship is for you. You have to define, do you like the word marriage? Do you not like the word marriage after discovery? Do you feel like you're married after your vows have been broken? Do you not feel like you're married after your vows have been broken, even though there's a legal paper saying that you are? Like you guys have to kind of work through these things and talk about them and come to the definitions that make sense for you after the things that you have. And I would say, work to understand the betrayed partner through that because they may, a lot of times the person that has done the acting out, they really want to hold on to the definitions of the anniversary or the marriage or whatever, even though they're the one that kind of blew it up. And they want to hold on to that because they're like, well, I knew the part of me that was true, that loved you, and that those things kind of help me remember and represent that good part of me. But you have to understand for the betrayed partner, like it's like wine has poured over the white sofa. You might have purchased the white sofa with, all the hopes and dreams in the world, but your behavior spilled wine all over it. And so all the betrayed partner can see is the wine spot. And it covers everything at this point. And it's so hard to not see the wine spot. And it's actually really hard to get that out. So that's why it's like, to keep on the visual that I just made up in this very moment, you buy a new couch, right?
Don't buy a white one.
Don't buy a white one. You buy a new couch and you have to determine, okay, do we drink wine on this couch? Do we not drink wine on this couch? How do we use this couch? It's a dumb analogy, but you see my point is that like we have to. It's dumb because I just
Do we get a slip cover for the white couch?
Do we get a slip cover?
Do we let the animals on the white couch?
Does the cat scratch it?
The cat has white fur. Do we let the cat?
Do we not drink wine anymore?
Yeah. Switching to beer.
No, but you see my point. And that's part of this conversation where I was kind of like, how do I feel about these things? It's hard for me to watch, other people navigate things, knowing what we've been through and being able to anticipate a little bit of what their future is going to look like, and thinking while I watch other people that, our situation in a lot of ways was like best case scenario in so many ways. And then that's why I want to do episodes like this because I'm like, we really promote the hard work. And I don't think we sugarcoat it, that it is hard work. But then I also want to say, hey, like we have this idealistic situation where Patrick jumped all in. He got into sobriety. He's never relapsed. He's done the work. He's a 10 out of 10. He's honest. He's like all these things. I truly think if somebody was coming in and meeting you now and was in a relationship with you, it'd be like the best relationship in the whole world. Like you are that person. So we have like this idealistic, and then I've done the work and I've done all this healing and like, we're really happy. Like, it's like, great. And so people listening can go, oh, you guys have like this perfect relationship after recovery, right? So I think that's why it's important to talk about these things, because it's like the grief doesn't go away just because we've done the work. Like it does still come up. There are still wounds and scars and insecurities, but the important thing is that we've created safety and vulnerability around it so that we can have these conversations in a really safe and really honest way. Where you're even like asking questions like, well, do you think that you could feel this way with somebody else? And, I feel like so many people would not even be willing to answer that question, maybe for fear of the answer. Yeah. Right. And so I think that is kind of what helps us navigate. And as soon as we were like, I was crying through this conversation just because there was grief and there were things coming up about, there's the death of the person, but you're still here and kind of processing this. And like, I was so innocent and now I'm not, but like, you're so awesome and I really love you. And like, it's just all these things that are, hard. Mm-hmm. And so I was crying a lot, but after I cried and after I talked and you received it so well, it's like, well, now I feel better. And like, now everything feels doable. Why? Because we are on a team and we can navigate the hard stuff together. And it's when we feel like we're on a team, even when hard things come up, that's like, okay, we can take another step.
Yeah. Carl and Laura Lenz on their podcast talk about one-day contracts, because their story was one of betrayal and infidelity. And so they talk, it's like it's a one-day marriage contract. So they make it through the day and then they renew it for tomorrow. And so I think about, you asked me, how do I process through that? And I think about like my definition of a great day with you is not the day where we stand on a beach and I'm in a suit and you're in another white dress and we kind of go through this thing. The definition of a great day is like today. So what happened? I got up in the morning, I worked out, I didn't do anything wrong, right? And then you got up and I spent time with you, and then here we are, like
just hanging out.
That's hanging out, and that's real life, and it's connected, and to me that's worth 1,000 renewal ceremonies, or it really is, because we've been able to get here, and I once again I don't know what tomorrow holds. I know what I'm secure in. I'm very secure in my ability to stay in recovery and be open and honest and receive what you are going to be able to put out. And my hope, I know what I am. My hope is that we have more days like today. Yeah. That's what I want. And so I could care less about the label. I could care less about the day. I could care less about any of those things. We're going on vacation again this Friday, and I'm just excited to spend time together and experience a new place together. It doesn't have to have any broader, deeper meaning other than the deep, deep meaning of us being with each other and being vulnerable and honest and open and, and things like that.
Choosing to spend time together in reality, knowing like, I know who you are, you know who I am, and like, I'm not hiding that from you. I had that conversation with you a couple days ago. You're not hiding that from me. Right. We've had so many conversations over the past 4 years, right? Like, so there's no secrets. There's really no privacy. There's nothing in our relationship that is standing in the way of I'm choosing to be with this person and I actually know who you are. Yeah. And that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I hope that this free flow conversation today, there's not like 3 points to better sobriety, but we just wanted to share a little bit about our personal experience. And I hear a lot sometimes that hearing our story is helpful and relates as you are navigating your own journey. So I hope that this piece was relatable and helpful as well, and maybe encouraging as you're going on your own journey. The last thing I want for you is to feel guilty if you're so many years into recovery and you have some anxiety pop up. That's normal. That's normal. So we just wanted to kind of share that with you today. Every day is a new opportunity to choose health and freedom. Make that choice today, and we will see you next week. Woohoo! If you're listening to this, it means you've made it through an entire episode. Part of recovery is spending time engaging in healing and self-growth activities. We are thankful that you chose our podcast to be one of those activities today. Make sure you reward yourself for that accomplishment. If you've enjoyed this episode or this podcast, we would love to hear from you. Please take just a few moments to leave a rating and review, letting us know your experience with Recover You. We not only love hearing how these episodes are helpful, but ratings and reviews help others just like you who are searching for recovery information and support find the podcast too. We can't wait to hear from you. See you next week.